Hey everyone, welcome to another Zwift racing video. In this video I'm going to be covering the World Indoor Cycling Rankings race that I did participate in on Friday, and it was a pretty fun race full of a bunch of smart Zwifters. And to learn more about this ICR series, I highly recommend checking out this Cy Bradley video that is linked up in the upper right corner because it has a lot of great informative information about this race. And this race is a pretty big deal because there are prizes on the line and for all the categories, which is something that has pretty much never been seen on Zwift before. So shout out to ICR because they're making racing a whole lot more competitive and fun through the incentive of prizes, and the whole point system that they've put behind this is pretty amazing. So you can see that this is a pretty small race of around 13 riders, so that meant that we would still get points. You need a minimum of 10 riders in order to get points for this race, and these are the bronze races, so they're not worth as many points, but it's still fun to see who you're going to be up against later on in the series, and I was really looking forward to racing against these riders. Some notable riders to watch in this race are going to be Brian Demescu from Cryogen and Bobby Edwards from Team Herd. One thing I noticed is that Bobby Edwards was the only one to actually choose a gravel bike in this race, which ended up playing pretty well for him because the finishing climb is around 1.5 miles of gravel. So having a gravel bike does give you the advantage on those climbs, but it also gives you the disadvantage on the 5 miles of road that there are before the finishing stretch. And that includes a KOM where riders are going to be going for the segment to try to get some extra points. Another thing to notice is that all these riders are extremely smart. You can see how easy they're going right now because they know that there really is no point in going hard this early on in the race. These are all very experienced Zwift riders. That means that the Zwift power ranks will be pretty good, and you can see that they're all just chilling, and they're going to be doing that until the KOM, the Castle KOM starts, which is when things really start to light up and it gets pretty spicy in this Zwift race. I'm going to fast forward through some of this because really nothing happens and there are really no attacks for the first few miles because everyone's playing it smart and just saving all the energy that they can. So you're going to notice that I am on the Tron bike. That's partially because I was just too lazy to change my bike, and I only joined the event a few minutes before it started, and I was extremely tired before this race for some reason, and I wasn't really ready to race, but I ended up finding my legs around halfway through the race, and things ended up turning out pretty well. So I did use a Tron for this, which is a pretty good all-arounder, and this is a good all-arounder course. The better setup would have been the S-Works Venge with the NV 7.8 wheels, because that is one of the best all-arounder setups. So right here, right when we make this corner, is when you start to see some riders drop back, and I was kind of confused on why they were doing that at first, but then I realized that there are FTS segment points for this part of the course because we are approaching the Castle KOM. So this is the reason why that they're doing this is because they want to be the last ones to start, because that will make it so that they don't need to be the first ones to finish in order to get the FTS points. That's a really smart strategy that I use sometimes when just riding with friends or family because I'm just very competitive like that. And I started realizing that, and I slowly started dropping back because I knew that that was the best strategy for this part of the course, and I decided to do that too because I knew that the chances of me getting all the points were pretty slim, and I'm in this to win it. So I was trying to get all the points I could in this race. So you can see that I immediately realized that the starter mark is right there, and Brian Demescu is one of the last ones to start with around a 1 to 2 second gap, and that's going to really play out well for him because if he can even just get third to the top, he will probably get first because the gap is going to be less than a second. You see that things lit up right there because riders immediately realized that the FTS segment was starting, so some were trying to get a gap and try to push the pace of this race, but there was a brief moment where it was pretty frantic and hard, but then it settled back down to this zone 2 to zone 3 rhythm, but you're going to see it kick back up once we get to the steeper parts of this climb, and this is kind of a long drag, and I'm going to talk about what I did wrong on this climb and how I could have gotten all the points on this climb, because I think I definitely could have, but it's just a strategy that I used did not fully work. So here you can see that the race has calmed down and things have definitely settled down because riders are realizing that this is not the place where they want to be using most of their energy. So they're settling around 2 to 3 watts per kilo and they're just waiting for the perfect time to attack. You can see on the steeper bits of the climb, riders do surge a little bit and I try to follow them. And I'm kind of just sitting comfortably near the back of the group because I know that things are going to light up in this next mile or so, because this KOM is not super long, so the finish of the climb will be coming up pretty soon, and there are some steeper gradients later on this climb, and this is only the first climb of the tube on this course. The race actually ends at the top of a climb, so there's quite a bit of climbing in this race, so it should be lots of fun, and you're going to see everything start to light up right about here. You can see the orange numbers start to hit. This is when riders really start to attack because it is pretty steep and it picks up to around 8% gradient, and I do make sure that I am with that main group, and then as soon as we catch each other we kind of ease off, and then it turns back into a game of cat and mouse for a little bit before we hit the next main part of the climb, which is a bit later on in the course because there is a small flat portion before we make a pretty much U-turn, and then it takes us back up a steeper part of the climb, leading us to the castle part of the course. My strategy for this KOM was just sit in as long as possible and just save all the energy I could so that I could have a pretty good kick at the end, and hope that most of the riders were pretty tired by the end of this race. And this wasn't quite achievable because riders did start going pretty hard early on and my legs weren't really ready to put in that big of an effort, and so they were still a little tired and I wasn't able to get that full sprint at the end. You're going to see that we're going to make a slight turn, or actually a pretty big turn right here, and we're going to take pretty much a U-turn. It's going to take us the opposite direction, and it's going to take us back to that area that we were before, but at a higher elevation where there is the castle part of the climb. You can see that things are starting to open up again, and it's all being led by this rider from Dirt T Baumgartner, I believe, and Tofu Smuggler from KRT. Those two are pretty strong riders, and they're normally the ones who are opening it up on these climbs and trying to spread the group out. You can see that Brian Domescus is just behind me, sitting on my wheel nicely and just waiting for the perfect time to go. Riders start to use their feather boost right now, and I wasn't really sure why they were using it because the climb is not even close to over. We still have probably around a minute or two left, and I'm just trying to hold on for dear life because everyone's used their featherweight power up, which makes them a lot faster than they normally would be going, and I'm trying to save mine so I have a better shot at the finish. But I think I might have been better off using the featherweight power up here so that I could save my energy a bit more and really set myself up for a successful sprint. You can see that there is one rider kind of off the front right now who is keeping things hot at the front, and this is when I turn on my featherweight boost. I think that I did go a little bit late and I should have started my sprint earlier so I could catch onto the wheel of the Zirt rider, ZIRT rider that is in front, and then I could have just drafted that rider for the rest of the segment so that I could come in around second-ish, but I settled for fourth, and that's pretty good. Checking the results later on, I am in around 35th overall. Considering that I did not do the first race, that's pretty good, so that would probably put me in around 10th or 15th. I'm not quite sure, but we will have a better idea of where I stand compared to the rest of the riders later on in the series. So I'm going to fast forward until we get to the dirt climb because that is when things get pretty exciting again. Something that you're going to notice is that this did cause some separation. There were only around 8 riders in the lead group, but the riders behind ended up catching back up because we were going pretty slow and the riders were fighting pretty hard to get back, and that included Bobby Edwards from Hurt, and he actually goes on to win this race. Sorry for the spoiler, but I think that it's important to note that because even though he was on the gravel bike, he was able to catch up before this climb, and he had a huge advantage on this climb because of that gravel bike, so he didn't have to put in as big of an effort on this climb, which is actually really smart. And I think, now thinking back on it, it could have been a smart decision to use a gravel bike, but I'm not entirely sure that that would have benefited me a ton because I feel that I probably would have gotten dropped on the Castle KOM and I wouldn't have the legs to hold on to the other riders. So you can see that I'm kind of holding a steady pace and I'm actually on the front of the group. And I have some pretty good memories on this climb because this is where I did go solo. And I did end up taking the win, so I was pretty confident on this climb. I thought that I might be able to drop some of the riders who were not the best climbers in this race, but then I eventually realized that that was not going to be happening, so I eased off and I let the other riders take the lead because I knew that I was better off like that, because if I was on the front the entire time, it would be really hard for me to gauge how much the other riders are suffering and whether I would be able to pull off a win on this course. I was definitely thinking that I was still in contention for the win because I was definitely very confident on this climb and I still had a decent amount of energy left. But it would really come down to how I used my energy and how the rest of the race played out. You can see that some riders are starting to get dropped and the group is kind of strung out, but there still is a nice group of 6 or 7 riders who are all holding a steady pace up this climb, and they ease off a bit on this flatter part, but it does kick back up once we hit the steeper gradients again. So you're going to see that I'm just continuing to sit in, and my heart rate's around 190, so it's not that close to my max heart rate yet because I am staying at a pretty decent pace at around zone 3 to zone 4, so I haven't been doing much of zone 6 because the group has not been pushing the pace that much. So you can see that Bobby Edwards is on the front. He does have an advantage because he is on that gravel bike. The rest of the riders, I believe, are on road bikes, and you can see that the pace is picking up slightly. Everyone's doing around 5 watts per kilo, which is pretty good for me because I can sit at that pace relatively comfortably while some of the other riders cannot, and that is because I'm a lighter rider, so doing higher watts per kilo is easier for me. Nobody is really trying to go early on this because everyone knows that the race is not going to be won at this point in the course. So everyone is staying at a relatively safe tempo at around 4 to 5 watts per kilo. And I do get a little bit separated here, but I definitely move up and I am able to get closer to the front of the group where it is better positioning for the finishing sprint. And you can see still 0.9 miles left, so way too far out to go early, and that would require around 5 to 6 minute effort to end up staying away for the rest of the time, or actually probably around a 3 or 4 minute effort because it does get flatter at the top. But right here you can see that we're starting to make the final few turns of this course, and it does turn to wood planks before the finish, and so it is not entirely dirt, which does give me the advantage over the riders who are using gravel bikes in this event, because the riders on gravel bikes are not at as big of an advantage on the wood planks, and the road bikes are just a tiny bit slower because of the rolling resistance that the wood planks actually do have, and everyone's still staying pretty chill. You can see that Brian Domescus has actually dropped back, and I believe he actually did a bike change so that he could try to pick off some other riders, but I don't think the bike change ended up being that successful. He was only a few seconds back from me, which does show how much gravel bikes help and how strong of a rider he is. But still, nobody is daring to go yet because there's still just over half a mile left, and nobody really wants to risk it this early, especially because there are prizes on the line and quite a few points for this race. So something about this course, or this climb actually, is that it's a bit misleading in the sense that it does switch to wood planks pretty early, making riders think that they are really close to the finish when they really aren't. So you're going to see everyone start to turn on their featherweight boost to try to open this up, and you can see that 3 riders are on the front, the rider from Dirt, KRT, and Herd, and this is when Bobby Edwards makes his move, and he just goes right off the front, and nobody really has the guts to chase him, especially because everyone is so tired. They don't want to use the little amount of energy that they still have left, and that lead just continues to grow and grow until the finish. And you can see that I am sitting in 5th place right now, which is not ideal. I ideally wanted to be in around 3rd place, but I just couldn't push the power needed in order to pass these riders. And you see that there's still 0.4 miles left, so I knew that this is way too early to start my sprint, but these riders went, so I knew that I had to go too. Otherwise, I would be left behind in the dust, quite literally in the dust because of the dirt. But you can see that I use my featherweight power up and I just go right past them because I realize that I am going to be slingshotted, so I really need to make the most of that power up and really just get as far as I could. But that costed me quite a bit because the other guys were just sitting comfortably in the draft around 4 to 5 watts per kilo, and this is when they just fly right past me and they just go right towards the finish. And you can see on my power graph I have nothing left. I'm trying to beat this dirt rider because We are like literally right next to each other. This happened to me like probably 4 or 5 times probably in the past week, and it's really annoying because he does just get the edge of me, and I don't turn on my power up because I don't realize that I do have another power up. That's something that I should have done, but I was suffering too much to realize that I still had a power up. That's going to be it for this video. Thanks for watching, and good luck on all your races. See you all next time, and ride on.